Welcome to the Shepherd Podcast. I'm Pastor Chris. I'm your host. The Shepherd Podcast is a chance to acquaint you with some people at Shepherd of the Hills in our church, school, and childcare. We have wonderful people here at Shepherd, and so I'd like for you to get to know some of them better. And today I'm honored to have as my guest someone who's been a part of the ministry at Shepherd for quite a while, and many of you may recognize her, but maybe you don't know her story as much. And so I'm very pleased today to be able to welcome Judy Friesenhahn. Judy, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Judy, you've been in ministry at Shepherd of the Hills since?
1982 is when I came.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you've worn a few different hats over the years.
Just a couple.
Just a couple?
Mostly teaching, but I've done other things too.
Yeah. Can you tell us about what is your current role at the school?
Right now, I'm fourth grade teacher, so it makes it easy. This year I have one main role, fourth grade. So, I'm teaching fourth grade at the school, and that's pretty much takes up all the time.
What other grades have you taught over the years?
I started with a combined third and fourth grade class and taught a combined class for 2 years. And then I had just third grade for a couple of years. And then I moved to a self-contained fourth grade for, I don't remember how many years, but it was a good number. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to sixth grade and was teaching with the junior high or the middle school grades, 6th through 8th, and kind of did a smattering of things. I taught art for a while. I did some exploratory Spanish while I was doing that. We had the sixth grade homeroom, and so I usually had a team teacher because we had 2 sections of sixth grade. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I was teaching the science for sixth grade and the language arts. A lot of times we had somebody doing the reading, but I usually did the science and math because my partner teachers generally were stronger with the reading or language areas. So that's kind of how we split it up. So I taught in the junior high level for quite a few years. I had 6th grade homeroom, but I also had a 7th grade homeroom. I'd moved to just doing mainly Spanish for a while.
Right, yeah.
And kind of built that program up a little bit. So I was doing 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Spanish and whatever other classes needed to be taught in middle school. So that included math sometimes some English, sometimes some literature, language arts. Okay. Then I also have worked with the special needs students, the ones who come to our school who have some IEPs, and making sure their needs get met. I did that for 1 or 2 years.
Can you say IEP in case people aren't familiar with the
Individualized education plans. So if a student is tested and has some things written up that they need to have accommodations made or have special learning needs, we can accommodate some of those at our school, and so those who were able to help meet their needs. I kind of was able to attend ARD meetings, which are through the public system, and that's where the parent and the teacher and administrators meet together to figure out what's the best course of action for this particular student.
Okay.
So I kind of had a hand in that for a year or two. I have worked to help put our curriculum into a new system, and a lot of different things.
Yeah, you've been a go-to person for many things.
Yeah.
You mentioned Spanish. Are you fluent in Spanish?
Many people think I am, but I don't consider myself to be as fluent as I would like to be, but I can hold a conversation and understand pretty much what the gist of a conversation is. So, yes, I guess.
Yeah, great. And now you're teaching 4th grade. Mm-hmm. So what makes teaching 4th grade different than teaching 6th grade or 2nd grade? What's unique about a 4th grader?
4th graders are ready to become a little bit more independent in their learning. So I enjoy that. Kind of, you can stretch them a little further. They're starting to learn a little bit more responsibility. They're very eager to work with work in groups, and learning to work with other people is a big thing we focus on in the classroom. Things are fresh, learning is fun, so having taught at the 6th through 8th grade level for a while, sometimes they're a little bit more challenging because their viewpoint is changing when you get to those middle school years. And so it was kind of nice in a way to go back to 4th grade where you tell them what the project is and they're excited about doing that.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Great. Well, let's go back a little bit and tell us about your upbringing. What made you the person you are today? What are events in your life that shaped you, and where you're from, and whatever you want to share about your upbringing.
Okay. Well, I am a native Texan, so I have that under my belt.
All right. Where originally?
I was born in Galveston.
Galveston. Okay.
My parents were both Lutheran school teachers.
Okay.
My father actually attended Concordia University when it was a boarding school.
Oh.
His background, we have lots of pastors and teachers in my family.
Okay.
So my dad's dad was a pastor. He was a circuit pastor in the Texas district and came down from Frankenmuth, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
So he came down with my grandmother and was in Whitehall and visited several different congregations. As being a circuit pastor, he would travel around.
Okay.
He died when he was a young 42 years old and had gotten sick and went to the hospital, developed pneumonia, and he didn't get better.
Oh, wow.
So that left my grandmother with 4 children, and my dad was about 12 at that time, so when he got to those high school years, he went to Concordia, and he was there it was a boarding school, so he was living there. He went on to become a teacher. He went to River Forest, and his first call was down to Corpus Christi to work in the Spanish mission they had developed in Corpus Christi. My mom was 7 years younger than Dad. She grew up in Iowa, so she came from the cornfields, and we got to see the Midwest because just about every summer when I was young, we would take a car trip up to Iowa and spend some time with my grandparents. She went to River Forest also, and her first call was down to Corpus at one of the Lutheran schools in Corpus.
So they both went to River Forest, and for those who don't know, that's the Concordia up in the Chicago area. And at that time, that was a designated teacher's college, right? You can only go to certain places to be a Lutheran school teacher, and that was one of the few. And did they meet in college then?
No, because they're 7 years apart. And Mom actually, there was a shortage of teachers, and they were looking to push people through faster. So she graduated after 3 years.
Okay.
And got her teaching certification to start teaching. She didn't actually finish her full degree. When I graduated from college, about a month before I graduated, she finished up her coursework to get her full teaching degree.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but they met down in Corpus Christi.
That's
because at that time in Corpus, there was the Spanish mission, and I believe there were 3 other Lutheran schools in Corpus Christi at that time. Today, there are none.
3 Lutheran schools in Corpus at the time.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so she and Doris Meyer, who's a member of our congregation, they were both from Iowa, and they knew each other. They would get rides together, and those Lutheran teachers from those schools would have fellowship and, hang out together.
Wow.
As fellow
so Doris
teachers.
And your mom.
Mm-hmm.
How neat.
And that's how Mom and Dad met. And so they got married, and I don't know if they really, when the transition happened, but Dad took a call to Galveston to teach and be principal at the St. John's, I believe, was the name of the church in Galveston. Okay. And that church isn't there anymore either, I don't believe.
Wow, things have changed over the years.
Yeah, they have. So he was teaching there. I was born there. 2 of my sisters were born there. And then my uncle, my dad's youngest brother, was a pastor in Marietta, Georgia.
Okay.
They had started a school, and they needed a principal. So he talked to my dad and said, how would you feel about coming to Georgia and being our principal? And Dad accepted that call. So I don't know how my mom did it, because there were three of us, three girls. We were pretty close together, because it was me and my next youngest sister, and then my next one, we were like within 4 years, 3 children. So those are pretty close.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yes.
And she was pregnant with my brother, and they packed everything up and moved to Georgia.
Okay.
So, and I look back and I think, I don't know how she did that, but they did.
That was a lot.
Yeah. So we started our life in Georgia then, and Dad and Mom both taught at that school, Faith Lutheran in Georgia.
And you said your dad was the principal?
And he was the principal, and he taught.
Okay.
So he did that dual role
Okay.
for many years. He did teach without being principal for a little while, but most of the time he was principal and teacher.
Okay.
And Mom taught first grade most of the time. So that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
That's where I started school. That
Yeah.
was my first school experience at Faith.
Yeah. You were how old again when you moved to Georgia?
I was 4. I was going to be 5 years old
Okay.
that fall. So I started kindergarten the first year we were there.
Okay. So you were born here, so you can claim to be a native Texan, but most of your memories then would be in
Right.
Georgia.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And you grew up with a lot of Lutheran church workers, particularly with your parents being educators. When did you know you wanted to be a Lutheran school teacher?
I've been thankful to God my whole life, because I haven't really felt like I had to make any big decisions about that, because I kind of knew when I was in 4th grade, I knew I wanted to be a school teacher. I don't know how I knew. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. In high school, I really enjoyed music a lot, and I was in the band and played my flute, and I thought, well, maybe this would be a good option to be a musician.
Yeah.
So I kind of toyed with that idea for a little while, but I was always pretty good, but never quite the best, and I know you have to really excel with musical talent to be able to make a living in the world of music. So I kind of stuck with the teacher idea after exploring a little bit.
Yeah.
And I ended up, because music was a great love, or it is a great love of mine. When I was looking at colleges, I knew I wanted to teach in a Lutheran school too. So it wasn't just being a teacher, but in a Lutheran school. So I planned to go to one of the Concordias. Being in Georgia, there weren't any very close by.
No.
Austin, Texas was actually the closest, but Austin was still a junior college at that time.
Right.
So there was Seward and River Forest and the Bronx, Bronxville, New York.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of looked at music programs and chose River Forest, mainly because of the music program that they had there.
So you followed your parents' path going to River Forest.
Yeah, and that's what everybody always would tell me growing up is, well, your parents are both teachers, so that's why you want to be a teacher. And it's like, no, that's not why I want to be a teacher. I feel like I need to be a teacher, but it's not because they're teaching.
You feel like you need to be a teacher. There's something inside of you that says this is God's calling.
Yeah.
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 So you went up to River Forest, did your education there. And then you came here, right?
And then I came here.
And been here ever since.
Yeah, I never have moved.
Wow. So what was that process of being placed in San Antonio? Was that announced to you, or did you get to pick?
No, well, they had started interviewing at that point in time. That was 1982. And so papers were being sent out. They had a placement director at River Forest, and my papers had been sent to a couple of different schools. I actually had an interview scheduled with a principal from a school in Toledo, Ohio. that I was going to be going to. And I think it was the day before, or maybe 2 days before that interview that I was scheduled to have on campus, Tim Eichstead gave me a phone call and said, we're looking for a teacher, and we would like them to be able to do some music, and you have Spanish down on your preferences, and so that would be great if you could do both of those things. And we're a young school just starting out. Would you consider coming to Texas? And I said, well, yes, I think I would, because as I had been looking at possibilities, I didn't know that I would be able to do both music and Spanish anywhere.
Right.
And the Toledo, Ohio position was going to include some music in that teaching position, but didn't have any Spanish in it.
Yeah.
And Spanish was something else that I really enjoyed a lot.
Okay.
So my dad, when we were little growing up, would speak to us in Spanish every once in a while, and I think that planted a seed. And so I took Spanish in high school and was able to travel to Mexico City as a trip in a high school group.
Okay, how neat.
And then wanted to continue studying the language. So when I went up to River Forest, they didn't have a lot of Spanish classes available on campus at Concordia. So I took, I think, my freshman year up there, I took classes there, but then I would walk about 6 blocks down the street to a Catholic school where they were teaching Spanish classes.
Okay.
So I took my Spanish classes at a different place. And continued those courses through college. I studied in Spain for a summer.
Did you? Oh,
between
wow.
my junior and senior year, and took some classes at the Universidad de Valencia.
All right.
And got a couple of credits there and toured Spain then during that summer. And so I wanted to be able to use that because I felt like it was fun for me to get to know another culture.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt like it was important for children to learn another language. And with the number of Spanish speakers we have in our country, I really felt even back then that it would be a very valuable asset to
Absolutely.
have. So if I could do that, that would be wonderful. And God put me here and gave me the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. God knew what he was doing.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Now, when you came, do you remember how many students we had in the school at that time?
I don't know the total number of students. My first class was 7. I had 3 fourth graders and 4 third graders.
Yeah.
And I know that there was the first and second grade classes, and they were a little bigger than mine.
Yeah.
And we had the kindergartners and pre-K.
Yeah.
So it probably, definitely less than 100, maybe 50, 60.
Yeah.
It was very, very small.
And what was it like watching the growth of the school over the years?
Oh, it was amazing because it really, really grew fast.
Yeah, it did.
Which was beyond anything anybody ever dreamed of. But God had plans here too, and so we went from, in my classes personally, it was like went from 7 to the next year there were 12, and then after that, when I went to the single grade classroom, I had a class of 24, I think it was. So it's like, okay, glad I had that first year to kind of get my feet wet because then we jumped in.
Yeah, yeah.
And the classes I taught were always 23, 24, 25 students. So, wow. And then we started to have 2 sections, and it just grew phenomenally. I think one of the other things that has been mentioned recently is the registration lines. That registration day when it opened up was always, we had to be at school super, super early because there would be long lines of people waiting to get registered.
Yeah, wow. Those were amazing days.
And we filled up really fast. So, it was fun. It was a growing time. We all worked together.
Yeah, yeah. Now, in addition to teaching, you also had a very busy home life with family. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about who's in your family, and then especially when the kids were little, how did you manage, being a full-time mom along with a full-time teacher?
Yeah, well, that's always been a challenge, but I got married in 1987, so I really didn't think I was ever going to get married because I hadn't met anybody, and we didn't have a whole lot of young men in our church. My time was taken up with teaching most of the time. So I met Jimmy, and we got married, waited a few years to start having children, but then they came quickly, and we planned the first one, and nothing after that, and God just gave them to us whenever we needed them, I guess. So we had Paul as our oldest. He's 29. Then there's Georgiana, who is about a year and a half younger than him, so they were very close together in age. Then Corey was born a little bit after that. There was a space there, and we thought, well, maybe we're finished, but no, Corey came along. And then Lily is my youngest, and she's a senior in high school this year, so we have those four. Jimmy has a daughter from another marriage, Michelle, and they have 2 little girls that are lovely and a great husband. Yeah. They live in San Antonio too. Right. Juggling, I don't know. I look at teachers that we have now with their young children, and I think, how did I ever do that?
Right, it's a lot.
Because I felt like the bag lady, because I'd walk into school with my school bag and their lunch boxes and their school bags, and dragging it all in. When it was time to take everybody home, it took about 30 to 45 minutes to go collect all of us from the classrooms. I'm sure you've experienced that too. Yeah, you don't leave and you're out of the parking lot in 5 minutes. It takes a while.
And my favorite thing is you spend the 30 minutes getting everybody collected in the car. You get them loaded up, and then someone says, I have to go to the bathroom. And so we unload and we go back in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So God takes care of you, and it makes it possible. Yeah. I don't think I could do it now, but I did it then.
He gives you the strength you need for the moment.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. He always does.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little more about your faith. Okay. How has your faith helped you in your life? How has it helped you with challenges that you've faced? Can you tell us a little more about your personal relationship with the Lord?
Well, I've known God all along. I feel like I had a personal relationship start with him probably when I was in about 5th grade, because my dad had gotten really, really sick. He had diverticulitis, I think it was, but he just was like white as a sheet, and something was very wrong. And so my mom and uncle, who is the pastor at the church, took him to the hospital, and he had to have a series of surgeries completed. So that was a very challenging time, and it was scary because, we had children and mom, and what would we do if Dad wasn't there anymore? So, and I was the oldest of the kids. So I think when I prayed then is when it's like, yeah, you're real, and you're going to be here, and you're going to carry us through. And so that's when I think my personal faith really started to grow. Yeah. But he's been there through everything. He carries it through. Times when I was traveling and didn't know anybody else, he was always there, and I always came back. I felt like he's always guided me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And he continues to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned traveling. I know there have been some times when you've gone up to Chicago, I believe, for a summer job. Can you tell us a little more about some of your travels and things like that?
Well, I did the traveling in Spain that summer. Yeah. And yes, I went up to Chicago for school, so that was quite a ways away from home. Right. And during Other travels I've done, since I got married, I haven't traveled so much.
Yeah.
But after I was teaching here for a couple of years, I really felt like I needed to go back to school. I was ready to go back.
Yeah.
So I got my master's not too far after. I think I was probably the youngest in my master's classes because all the other teachers had taught for 15, 20 years.
Right.
And I was like a third-year teacher.
Yeah.
So, but I did get my master's and finished that and was ready to celebrate and take a trip. So I wanted to go back to Europe and see the rest of Europe. So I signed up to go with a travel group, and it was for younger people. So I went on one of these whirlwind tours where you go to like 14 countries in I don't know how many days,
Oh, wow.
20 or 21 days. And so we went over and we went to London, and then we went to a bunch of different places in Europe.
Okay.
And I really, really enjoyed that. There were, the travel group was composed mainly of people from Australia because they were all on holiday. And
Oh, okay.
so that was kind of fun to meet people from all over the place as we saw Europe. My other travels have mainly been with family, and my mom's family, I have an uncle in New York. I have an aunt who's in Arizona now. I had an uncle who lived in California for a long time. I had an aunt in Milwaukee. So they're kind of all over the place. I have relatives in Florida too. So there were lots of opportunities to see different parts of the country.
Oh, nice.
By visiting family.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of travel outside of that, though. I like to travel, but it just hasn't been something that we've been able to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, those are some good experiences, what you mentioned right there.
Yeah.
What's something that most people may not know about you?
I don't know. I love to spend my time pulling weeds, and that's kind of a weird thing, but
well, I would like to invite you to my house.
I know everybody always says, "Why don't you come to my house?" It's like, well, when I get them all pulled out of my yard,
Right?
Which I don't think that'll ever happen. But it's a way to get your fingers in the dirt. Just makes you feel good. It kind of relieves stress, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
I do a lot of thinking while I am pulling the weeds up.
Yeah.
So if there's trying to think of a better way to present something in class, or when I was teaching Spanish for those years, coming up with little songs to help them remember verb conjugations. Those came while I was pulling weeds.
Yeah.
So that's one of my things I like to do. The kids laugh at me and say, "Mom, where are you?" "Oh, she's out pulling weeds again."
And they come back every year, though. That's the problem.
They do. They're hardy organisms, and
Yes,
it's
they
like,
are.
why do we try to get rid of them and pull them out all the time? Because they keep coming back. It's if only the good things. And sometimes I think about life, and it's like how easy it is for those bad things to creep in, and how hard you have to work for the good habits to stay established.
Absolutely.
And take care of those things. So
yeah. So the weeds provide some think time.
Yeah.
Sounds to me like some of the things you think about are how to improve, how to make something better. What's your mindset on improving? I mean, you've been teaching since 1982. What is there to improve on at this point?
Well, I feel like there's a whole lot to improve on, especially recently with all the changes that had to be made.
Oh, yeah.
It's, and I enjoy learning, so I think I try and help kids like to learn, because if you like to learn, you'll do more of it.
Yeah.
But I enjoy learning new things, and so there's always a challenge, and it's like your faith life too. You're never going to get all the way there until you're in heaven, so there's always something to be working on.
Right.
And I feel it's that way, and that's kind of one of the reasons I chose to go into teaching, and particularly why I chose elementary school, certification up through 8th grade instead of going in secondary route, because you can do a lot of different things.
Sure.
And you can integrate, everything altogether. And I could never figure out, well, what would I want to have as my one subject I would teach?
Yeah.
But I enjoy having a bunch of different things to work with.
And it has been a challenging past year having to do a hybrid of in-person and online. How's that been for you to be able to juggle all that?
Well, it's been a learning experience.
There you go. I guess we're all about learning around here, aren't we?
I have never considered myself to be technologically advanced.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to be in order to get everything hooked up.
Right.
In order to continue learning in today's world, you have to know how to navigate the web and how to hook things up and get them connected and put all that in place. That's the skills that the children need to learn. So it's like, well, I guess I better know how, because they're going to have to know how. And if I don't know how, they're never going to learn.
Yeah, it's just today's world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's brought about some things that are good. I think education could use some refreshment, and this kind of forced us into it. It really makes you think about what is the most critical piece of what I'm teaching that I really need to get across, and what's the best way to do that'll integrate well and that'll engage everybody who's learning, both at home and at school. And so last spring was quite challenging because everybody was at home, and then this year having some at home and some at school. It's a lot of work to do. But it's still, learning can still happen, so that's good.
Yeah, learning still happens. Yeah, we're learning all the time. Well, thank you for your dedication as a teacher in our school. I know you're very highly respected by your peers, and you've touched a lot of lives in your ministry at Shepherd of the Hills, so thank you for that ministry, and also your participation in the church as well. Your family's very active in the church, whether it's you in the music ministry or just being faithful to participate. And so you're a blessing.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for spending time on the podcast today.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And thank you all for tuning in. I know you enjoyed getting to know Judy better. And please check us out next time as we continue to introduce you to some more great people here at Shepherd of the Hills. Until then, the Lord's blessings to you. May He keep you healthy and safe. And God's peace be with you today.